In a small town in Ohio, there stands a house with a history so dark that it defies explanation. That's the Bel Air House, a place where the supernatural reigns and the terror lingers in every single shadow. Tonight, we explore the harrowing tale of Kristen Lee, a woman who stepped into the clutches of the malevolent entity. It all began in 2005 when Kristen was looking for a new home. Now, this was after her previous home was destroyed by not just one, but by two devastating hurricanes. She found herself absolutely drawn to the Bel Air House. The price was right, but the cost, it would be far greater than she would ever imagine. Now, from the very first day that she walked into the house, Kristen was plagued by strange and unexplainable events. Everything from footsteps that would echo in empty rooms, ghostly figures that would flicker in and out of existence, and objects that would move as if guided by invisible hands. Now, one fateful night, an unseen force attacked Kristen and her little dog Bella, leaving absolutely no doubt that this was no ordinary home. The longer she stayed, the worse things became, and the more the house would pull her in. Driven to the edge by the relentless hauntings, Kristen attempted to escape by selling the home. But no matter who took the keys, you see, they always found their way back to Kristen. New owners and renters, they were always quickly driven away by the same exact sinister forces. And so, the haunting question remains: did Kristen find the Bel Air House? Or did the Bel Air House, did it find her? You just found yourself in another episode of Retraced Echoes.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on our social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook by searching for Retraced Echoes. Visit our website at www.retracedechoes.com to submit your own stories. Bert might take your story and turn it into its very own episode. Today's podcast episode draws its chilling inspiration from the book Paranormal Confessions, True Stories of Hauntings, Possession, and Horror from the Bel Air House by Kristen Lee. For those captivated by the eerie tales and haunting encounters, we have included a link in the description where you can purchase this intriguing book and delve even deeper into the mysteries of the Bel Air House. For those brave souls interested in experiencing the Bel Air House firsthand, tours are available, offering a unique opportunity to explore its haunted halls. Nightly rates for the entire house are $500, or for those seeking a more immersive experience, all access weekends are available for $995. Whether you're a seasoned paranormal investigator or simply curious, the Bel Air House awaits, with its doors open to the unknown. Now back to Bert for today's spooky tale.
Now, when someone faces destruction, they need a safe space, a sanctuary, a place that they can call home. For Kristen Lee, this quest began in the aftermath of nature's fury. Hurricanes Francis and Ivan, they had ravished her residence in Quincy, Ohio, leaving her and her two sons along with their dog without a roof over their heads. Now, Kristen, a dedicated graduate student, juggled full-time work, found herself homeless, striving to make ends meet amidst all the chaos. Relief came in the form of a FEMA grant, a beacon of hope, promising a fresh start. With a renewed determination, she set out to find a modest and comfortable abode where family, they could rebuild their lives. Her search led her to a quaint address at 1699 Belmont Street in Bel Air, Ohio. Seemed like a simple, affordable solution. Little did she know that this house harbored secrets that would forever alter her reality. Now, this was no ordinary home. As Kristen would soon discover, 1699 Belmont Street was a gateway to the unknown, where the boundary between the living and the dead blur, a place where relentless spirits roamed, and the past, it refused to be buried. Now, the old saying goes that pictures can be deceiving. I believe that to be true. I think the reason for that is that a picture can create an image in our mind of dreams that have yet to be fulfilled. I believe that's the very case with the Bel Air House. You see, the house, it was 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, Had a dining room, a living room, a foyer, beautiful hardwood floors, and a fireplace. Tell me that doesn't paint a very inviting picture. But then you add to it had a spacious yard. What better home to have when you have 2 sons and a family pup called Bella? Now this house, it was a foreclosure, it was affordable. It seemed like the deal of a lifetime. So that evening, after work, Kristen met with a realtor at the property. Her first memory of the century-old house? It was standing on the front porch and peeking through the bay windows and gleaming at the hardwood floors. A wooden hutch was in the corner of the dining room. That also caught her eye. The size of the house, it was massive. So massive that she got lost on her initial visit. Now Kristen was immediately drawn to the wood floors, the cozy fireplace, the expansive windows, and the charming brick floors in the kitchen and the hallway. But it was the attic. It was the attic that truly caught her heart. As she went up the stairs, she discovered a secret hiding place, a nook away from the world. I would almost say a sanctuary inside of a sanctuary. Any sinister energy lurking within the house, it remained unnoticed. Let's be honest. If there was any kind of negative feelings, they were probably overshadowed by all the many things that she had been going through in the last few series of months. She lost her home, 2 hurricanes, trying to know where she was going to sleep with her kids each night. Stress and anxiety. That would easily cloud anybody's perceptions. And Kristen was a master student in forensic psychology. She understood how deeply trauma could impact the mind. Yet none of that mattered. Not in this moment when she's standing in this attic. She felt as though she had found something perfect, something new. And in that moment of hope and determination, Kristen signed the dotted line. The Bel Air House was now hers. A place that she believed would be a fresh start for her and her family, much like many of the families that we cover on this very podcast. Now, first, the Bel Air House, it was extremely exciting for Kristen. The thrill of owning her first home, completely purchased on her own, filled her with pride, exhilaration. In those first initial days, there was nothing paranormal that Kristen noticed. But maybe it was the subtle signs that she just didn't catch on to. Maybe like a piece of furniture if it moved slightly from its original position, or the floorboards would creak when there was no one in sight. Kristen would attribute that to just the quirks of an old house. The wind, she would tell herself. Houses have their own noises, their own sounds, their own behaviors. Missing item, it was just something that was simply misplaced, not vanished by supernatural means. Now, looking back, it was clear that Kristen was desperate. She was enamored by the beauty and the charm of her new home. The recent trauma with the hurricanes and the floods, they left her feeling almost numb. In hindsight, Kristen would realize that she was experiencing an energy drain, the feeling of being weighed down, strangely soggy, as if carrying heavy carpets soaked with floodwater. Now, living in the house, it made her feel almost disconnected from the outside world, as if she had drifted back in time. She blamed the flood, the trauma of losing her home, the sudden upheaval of her life, the enormous workload, the PTSD, anything and everything but the paranormal. But that was all about to change. You see, the entire thing, it started with some footsteps. It was a seemingly ordinary day. Kristen was getting stuff done around the house that she knew she had to get done. That's when she heard it. Somebody walking in the attic above. She froze. The creaking of the floorboards echoing with each step, each creak. The unsettling realization dawned on her that she was the only one that was inside the house. The sound, it stopped as she exhaled. She convinced herself that it was merely just an old house settling. She returned to her work in the kitchen. She tried to dismiss the noise, but the footsteps, they resumed, each creak more unnerving than the last. Someone or something was in the attic. Now, at the time, Hefe, the father of her son, He was living with them, and he had taken a liking to the attic. He had transformed it into a tattoo parlor. Now with that, Kristen started thinking, well, she must have just missed him coming home. He probably got there and went upstairs, and if anything, it was just him. The clarity of the footsteps that made it hard to think otherwise for her. Imagine her shock when Hefe walked through the front door later that day. When she asked if he had been in the attic, he confirmed her worst fear. He hadn't. Kristen had been alone in the house, alone with the footsteps. One night, Kristen found herself asleep in the living room, which was not necessarily uncommon. You see, the house was still a work in progress. A lot of times she would do things around the house and get things done and sit down on the couch and eventually fall asleep. Suddenly, she awoke. She was disoriented, but there was also something that was unsettling. It was like a sensation that something was terribly off. The house was silent. In her family, they were still fast asleep. Everything seemed normal. But that was until she looked up. There, sitting beside her on the couch, was a man. A tall, thin man with facial hair. He had a hat on. His entire form appeared in shades of gray, as if he had stepped out of an old black and white movie. Most unnerving, he was transparent. Kristen sat right up. She screamed, "Who are you?" The gray man, he didn't respond with words. Instead, he stood silently, walked into the foyer, and vanished in the blink of an eye, as if he had never been there at all. Now, as Kristen caught her breath, her heart pounding, she glanced back at the couch. There in the cushion was a clear impression. It was like a dip in the cushion where the gray man had sat. It was no dream. In that moment, everything Kristen thought she knew about the new house changed. You see, this was the first time she saw an entity in the Bel Air house. But it wouldn't be the last. The house's dark secrets, they began to reveal themselves one chilling encounter at a time. Now, as time went on, things in the Bel Air house, they took a very dark turn. It was as if something was constantly trying to get Kristen's attention, emerging from the shadows to make its presence known. Items would vanish, only to reappear in places that they couldn't have possibly been placed. Objects would move on their own accord, and there was a very unsettling energy that permeated from the very house. Kristen, she became increasingly fearful of the second floor. You see, that's where most of the activity seemed to be happening. She hoped that by avoiding the space, that whatever lurked might leave her and her family alone. Lane's toys and the television, they were moved to the foyer, while their clothes, they found a new home in the basement, in the downstairs closet. In a desperate bid for coexistence, she silently bargained. "You can have the second floor. I'll take the first floor, and we can coexist. If not quite in peace, then at least something like it." But the entity, it had very different plans. You see, one night while laying in bed in what's now known as the Edwin Hetherington room, Kristen's sense of what was normal, it was completely changed. Her thoughts were shattered. Now Bella, her dog, it was laying by her side, and the atmosphere had suddenly changed. An entity manifested as a black rain cloud, crackling with static electricity. You see, the air, it was like pulsating with this type of intense charge. But Kristen, before she could even comprehend what was going on, or especially what she was seeing, she was forcefully pushed backwards and held down by an unseen force. Bella barking frantically, trying to protect her. She jumped on the bed to try to defend her, and in a very disturbing turn, the spirit retaliated. Bella was thrown across the room with significant force. Panicked and terrified, Kristen, she managed to scramble off the bed, grabbing Bella, and they fled from the room. Seeing apparitions was one thing, but being physically attacked was a nightmare that was brought to life.
Fear has a way of pushing us beyond our limits, and for Kristen Lee, the Bel Air House had become a prison of unseen horrors. Determined to escape before something worse happened, she sought refuge in the company of friends, never wanting to be alone in the house. Everywhere she turned, it felt as though unseen eyes were watching her every move. Phantom footsteps echoed through the halls, and apparitions would materialize out of thin air. In 2009, she finally moved out, vowing never to return. It felt like an escape from a relentless nightmare, but in many ways, it was just the beginning. Desperate for a new start, she had pinned a map to her office wall and thrown a dart, asking to be spiritually guided to a greater good. The dart landed on Massachusetts, and so she and her family packed up and left. Despite her best intentions, Bel Air House wasn't done with her. Not long after leaving, she received a call from Bel Air's code enforcer, demanding she return to take care of the property. The house, it seemed, still had a hold on her. The house that she had hoped to leave behind was calling her back, its dark presence still lingering, refusing to let go. Desperation can drive one to extreme measures, and for Kristen Lee, every attempt to rid herself of the Bel Air House seemed futile. Financially strained and still a graduate student, she couldn't simply abandon the property. Renting the house seemed like a viable option, but the relentless hauntings ensured that none of the tenants stayed for long. The most determined renter lasted only a year, their stay marked by eerie encounters and terrifying events. Reports of paranormal activity were constant. One tenant narrowly escaped injury when a chandelier fell, missing his head by mere inches. Another experienced a full-on physical assault, an encounter that left them shaken and fleeing the property. Each departure left Kristen more distraught and uncertain of what to do with her haunted house. Returning to her townhouse, Kristen's mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. The thought of having to live in the Bel Air House again filled her with dread. A familiar and unsettling sight appeared. The gray man, the same apparition that had awakened her that fateful night in the living room. He walked toward her, still transparent, still dressed in old-fashioned clothing. Kristen felt an uncanny sense that he had come specifically for her, having followed her from Bel Air. But why follow her and not the departing tenants? They had lived in the house more recently. As the gray man approached, he turned and looked directly at her, his gaze filled with an inexplicable knowing.
Sometimes we have to find the simplest of pleasures, especially when there's stress and aggravation. And let's be honest, when you're dealing with hauntings like Kristen was, it's very easy to have those frustrations and anxiety. One day, should I say one night, she decided to go sit up on top the roof of the Bel Air house. She had a guitar in hand. She decided that she wanted to watch the harvest moon rise over the Ohio River. That was the best position to do it. She would actually sit sideways. That way, as she was sitting up there, she could also see the office door through the window. Started to strum her guitar. All of a sudden, the office door had caught her eye. It was opening very slowly. She assumed it to be her husband, Daniel. He probably returned home, so she called out to him, but she got no response. Now, by this time, Kristen, she was well aware of the house's haunting nature. She chalked it up as just the spirit's usual antics. As she would stare at the door, moments later, a chill would run right down her spine as she saw the apparition of a little girl in a white dress walking into the office. And it was heading upstairs to the attic. Now, this was not Kristen's first encounter with Emily, spirit residing in the Bel Air house. You see, the first time that Kristen even heard Emily's voice was all the way back in 2009, just as she was preparing to leave the house, try to get some type of a fresh start. It was in the attic with paranormal researchers Danny and Mike. They were attempting to communicate with the spirits using a shack hack, a radio device scanning frequencies. It creates somewhat of like a white noise. Suddenly, Emily's voice, it broke through the static, clear and unmistakable. "Hi, Kristen." Hearing her name spoken by a spirit for the first time left Kristen in shock. Skeptical at first, she questioned if maybe it was a prank, but the reality was undeniable. When asked her name, the spirit responded, "Emily, followed by Davis. The voice, it was that of a child. Curious yet cautious, Kristen inquired about Emily's favorite game. Tag, came the innocent reply. Now, despite the childlike tone, Kristen was all too well that spirits will oftentimes disguise themselves and adapt into a childlike voice or even the form of a child to, if anything, trick us into like a sense of not being as threatened. It's less scary. Now, the game of tag was not the only game that Emily liked to play, and the attic was not the only place where she would play. Even the simplest moments can turn into something unsettling in a house that is steeped with the supernatural. Let me give you an example. One day, neighborhood kids, they came over to play video games with Kristen's son. To her horror, she discovered that they were climbing out into the roof through a bedroom window. She ran right upstairs, was like, "Get back inside, what are y'all doing?" She put an end to a very dangerous escapade. When she would look at them and say, "What in the world would go through your brain? Why would you think that's a good idea?" The children claimed that the little girl in the white dress told them to go out onto the roof and play. What a scary thought. But why was Emily here? What was her purpose? Kristen would find that investigating Emily's history would be a huge challenge, but eventually she did find that she was the descendant of Jacob Davis, who founded the settlement that would become the Bellaire in 1802. Other spirits inside the house would say that Emily drowned as just a child. And when she checked, the records confirmed that Emily Davis did indeed drown in the Ohio River. Now, Emily, she used to play at the Bel Air House with the Hetherington children, which added another layer to the house's very complex history. Now, during her research, Kristen uncovered a very startling fact. You see, there was not just one Emily Davis, there was two spirits named Emily Davis at the Bel Air House. The second Emily, it was not a child. It was an older presence. Finding information about the older Emily, it was extremely difficult, much like the first. But she believes that it might have been a friend of Jacob Hetherington. Now, I want to take us back to the year 2008. Kristen had a severe flu, like it was bad. She spent most of her time in the first floor bathroom. But despite her illness, she would keep an ear out for Lane and for her dog Bella that was always playing nearby. They'd kind of taken to sleeping on the first floor. And there was always the sound of Lane's feet and Belle's nails that was kind of clicking on the hardwood floor. Now, Lane knew never venture outside, never touch the stove, and absolutely never ever go to the attic door. Kristen always kept that door locked anyway. There was always this unsettling aura about the entire attic, and Kristen knew to, if anything, keep it completely locked. She didn't want her kids anywhere near it. Now, as Kristen is sick in this bathroom, she realized that the usual sound of Lane and Bella playing kind of stopped. She started to feel a little bit anxious. The sudden silence, it was alarming. There was no footsteps, no laughter, no barking. It was a silence that instantly put her in like this high sense of alert. Dragging her sick body out of the bathroom, Kristen called out, "Lane! Bella!" She received only silence in return. Frantic, she searched the entire first floor, but she found no sign of them. She raced upstairs, where she felt a very cold dread creeping up her spine. Suddenly, a very barely heard whisper. It came in her left ear. It said, "Attic." That was all she needed to hear. She sprinted up the attic and discovered the door. It was unlocked. Why was it unlocked? How did it get unlocked? She flew up the stairs, heart pounding, to find Lane standing on the edge of the gable, ready to jump right out the open window. He says, "I'm Buzz Lightyear. I'm going to fly." Kristen grabbed him just in time, pulling him away from the open window. The quick relief turned into a full-fledged panic attack. The reality of what almost just happened, it was sinking in. You see, the Bel Air House, it's more than just a relic of the past. It is a living testament to the paranormal, a nexus of the supernatural activity that has persisted even into the recent history. Now, in the years since Kristen first moved into the Bel Air House, numerous paranormal investigations, they've taken place. Teams of researchers and mediums, they've sought to uncover the secrets hidden within its walls. Seances have been conducted, attempting to communicate with the restless spirits that reside there. Each encounter, each investigation, peeling back another layer of the house's dark and deep, mysterious history. The story of the Bel Air House is not just about the spirits that inhabit. It's also about Kristen Lee, the woman who's been at the very center of these experiences. Her journey from skeptic to believer, her struggles and triumphs, they all contribute to the very haunted history of this very haunted house. Now, in an effort to try to delve deeper into these mysteries, I've personally reached out to Kristen Lee, hoping that she'd come onto the podcast for an interview. There's a lot of stories that I left out from her book because A, I want you to go read her book, and for two, if she comes on to do an interview, I'd love her to tell those stories herself. If anything, we hope to bring her on for more than just the stories, but to also share the experiences and perhaps uncover new revelations about the Bel Air House that none of us know. It's definitely a location that I know one day I look forward to investigating myself.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the haunted corridors of the Bel Air House. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and stay updated on all our latest episodes. You can find us on all major social media platforms: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Follow us for behind-the-scenes content, updates, and more. And don't forget to visit our website at www.retraced.echoes.com to submit your own stories and connect with fellow listeners. Your support helps us keep exploring the unknown and uncovering more chilling tales. If you're intrigued by unsolved mysteries and deep dives into the paranormal, be sure to check out Deceptive Reality, a podcast that Bert co-hosts with my buddy Nick. Every Friday, they delve into a different unsolved mystery, exploring every twist and turn in detail. From missing persons to unexplained phenomena, Deceptive Reality brings you the most perplexing cases, inviting you to join us in unraveling the mysteries. Don't miss out. Subscribe today and dive into the unknown with us every week.
Stay curious, stay spooky, and until next time, keep your lights on and your doors locked. Until I see you in the next podcast, goodbye.
In a small town on the river's edge, there's a house with a history. Whispers in the walls, shadows on the stairs. It's a mystery. Bought it in the summer, thought I found a home, but the nights were filled with chills. Footsteps in the attic, voices in the air, against my will. And I tried to tell myself it's just an old house creaking, but the feeling in the air leaves me lost and seeking. Echoes of Bel Air haunting me, they're everywhere. Can't escape the memories. Living in a house of mysteries. Phantoms in the night, dancing in the pale moonlight. Bel Air's calling out my name, caught in its eternal game. Saw a little girl in a white dress. She was standing by the door. Told the kids to climb the roof, and then she vanished once more. Chandelier fell just inches away. Chills run down my spine. There's no peace in this place, where the past and present intertwine. And I tried to tell myself it's just an old house creaking, but the feeling in the air leaves me lost and seeking. Echoes of Bel Air haunting me, they're everywhere. Can't this trance. Echoes of that haunting me, they're everywhere. Can't escape the memory.